So we've sat here for about 10 minutes trying to come up with a meme opening to do with John Wick's name, and yeah, they all sucked. John Wick, more like John Wicked.
So, if you've seen our review for John Wick 1... we have another review for John Wick. Okay, so we have seen John Wick Chapter 2, now we never reviewed.
This is a shit opening.
Alrighty, so we just checked out John Wicked, the John Wick musical, starring Dorothy from...
This is our worst effort of all time.
But you know what doesn't suck? John Wick Chapter 2.
Now, we never did review the original John Wick because we didn't see it until a couple of days ago, and my god, how had we not? Because between The Raid, Mad Max Fury Road, and John Wick, that is the holy trifecta of action films in the 21st century. It just does not get better than those three. And so, knowing that John Wick is finally out, or John Wick Chapter 2 is finally out in Australia, well, soonish, it's actually still not out currently.
Yeah, it's
still out. We're going to see it early here, which is late everywhere else. But it's the kind of movie that you need to see, because this is action at its best.
So, Chad Stahelski returns to direct this sequel. Now, he was the director of the first film, but there was another director who was also involved who got later credited, but is also uncredited, who's also doing Atomic Blonde and Deadpool 2. So I'm a little bit confused when it comes to that. But anyway, Chad Stahelski directs this film once again with a different cinematographer this time. Yep. And essentially we're just finding John Wick at the start of the film, and he's after his car to begin with.
Yep, basically picking up almost like where Chapter 1 ended, because it would be Chapter 1 now, I guess. So basically, you don't need to have seen Chapter 1. It does make the experience much better, but he's going after his car this time, and that actually leads him... I mean, that's kind of a separate story to what happens to the rest of the film. Basically, the world of John Wick's kind of... this world of assassins just opens up and expands in a really exciting sequel-type way, in a way that sequels should be done. Now, is this movie better than the first one? I don't think there's an actual, accurate answer for that, because some people will like the first one more, some people will like this one more, and I don't think either is better than the other. And it basically is because the first film is more precise and is more stylized, whereas this film swaps that kind of precision and stylization out for locations and situations. There's certain locations that they film here, like in Rome and in New York, the New York subway and stuff, in art galleries, that just could not have been kind of overly stylized like the first one was. So we end up with a film that does actually feel a little bit different. It's mainly because we're seeing so much more of this world, and it just kind of, it's an expansion, I guess.
Yeah, and we explore the Continental a lot more, and its history and its origin, and what the rules are, essentially, for all these, assassins that belong to it. Which is interesting, and I was intrigued, but at the same time, it was great to see and explore it. I didn't feel it bogged it down, but it definitely slowed it down. Whereas the first one, it was kind of like, you could get away without having to explain it, because it was like, this is John Wick, he needs to get from A to B. And it was like, now you're in the Continental, and in the first one, you're like, oh my god, this place is so intriguing, what's going on, it's really interesting. But now, this time around, we get things a bit more explained to us, which is just never as exciting as it is when it's just there and it's unknown.
So while this film is slower than the first one, it definitely makes up for it with intrigue. All of the things that happen in this movie are really interesting. The lore is really captivating. Watching that world, as we've said, expand, seeing John Wick have to go on basically what he would have been like when he was living his old life as an assassin, as opposed to him trying to work around the boundaries to get it done without being drawn back into the life like he was in the first one. So there's a lot of really interesting characters that pop up, a lot of really interesting interactions. So there's a whole lot of that makes it really work.
And I guess we get some really sweet sequences as well. Yeah. My two favourite from the film was definitely the opening one when he's after his car, and then the end sequence in the mirror section, as much as I say, because I was just like, oh my god, I got no idea how they pulled this off, to be honest.
There's a lot of stuff in this where you just can't really work out how they managed to do what they did, especially in the locations. When you're filming in the catacombs in Rome, and then you're filming in this kind of art gallery in the Hall of Mirrors, you've got to question how half of this stuff was done. And while we've said it is not as operatic as the first film, a lot of the stuff is a lot kind of, not messier, but it's got more of that grungy vibe where it's going in and kind of getting it done, as opposed to these really long takes. But, that being said, there's just, I mean, watching a guy who doesn't miss with every shot he fires is always going to be entertaining, and it is entertainment at its maximum here.
Yeah, plus we get some really exciting additional characters, especially Common's character here as well, was fantastic. Such a great choice to put in this film. Common's always captivating, and he just adds an extra layer. Plus, I mean, him playing Assassin, he's done it quite a few times now. It was just so great to see him in this world.
Go head to head like that seem to have like a bit of a history in this was really interesting. And I think kind of the overall thing with this movie, once it finishes, you're left with a really satisfying feeling because the last 5 minutes of this movie are really, really effective and they beg for a chapter 3. And I must say, is while the ending, while it's happening, you're like, kind of, is it fizzling out? And then it just surges up again. You're like, this is just amazing. The other thing that I will mention that the ending did nail was the soundtrack, because I think the first one probably had a bit of a better soundtrack as well. It's a bit more present, it's a lot more powerful, whereas here, it was definitely there, but it just didn't have that kind of thump that the first one did.
But yeah, no, it's so exciting moving forward. I really cannot wait for the next film because there's just going to be so much build into it, and I'm sure the fight scenes are just going to be, again, bigger and better once more. But yeah, I mean, this film was still very good, very exciting. We got bigger environments and we got a lot bigger fights as well, but it just wasn't, I suppose, as intimate for me, and it wasn't as stylized at times.
I think we probably prefer the first. We probably prefer the first, but in no way is either one of these better than the other, I don't think. I think they're pretty much on par for different reasons.
Yeah. And so that's why we're going to settle on this one with a 7.6 out of 10. Well worth your time.
So that was our review of John Wick Chapter 2. Have you seen it yet?
Did you like it?
Did you hate it?
Did you like this video?
Of course you did.
Crave more banter?
If so, you can subscribe to our YouTube channel down there somewhere.
And don't forget to check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, and Twitter, all at Breaking Banter.